Welcome, everyone. The Marijuana Time Show for March 6, 2018. Thanks to everybody checking us out. Thanks to everybody who likes and comments and shares the videos. You're helping us spread the truth about cannabis. Check us out on the Marijuana Times website as well, marijuanatimes.org. A bunch of great articles, all of these videos, everything you need. The cannabis community and industry, marijuanatimes.org. Today, talking more about the Illinois Senate approving another step in a long path towards adult use legalization. Also, a TV anchor in Arkansas disclosing she is one of the people who recently got a medical marijuana cultivation license or is involved in one of the companies in Arkansas. Talk about that. We also, to wrap up the show, we have an interview with Zeyead Gharib from HarvestDirectEnterprises.com. He's the CEO and co-founder, HarvestDirectEnterprises.com. They say they're the first company in the world to develop a manufacturing method known as Lacy that allows them to capture an entire cannabis strain in a pill. I asked him about that and more, and you'll hear that interview coming up here on the Marijuana Times Show. First, of course, I want to tell you, as always, the Marijuana Times Show is brought to you by NatureSideCannabis.com. Side is spelled C-I-D-E. Take advantage of their expertise and their line of organic, all-natural pesticides. You want to grow safe and poison-free. You don't want to use harmful chemicals and pesticides on your grows, and you want to be regulatory compliant. NatureSide's approved for pesticide use on cannabis cultivations in Colorado, Oregon, and Washington. Go check them out. NatureSideCannabis.com, a proud sponsor of the Marijuana Time Show. Go check out their products. They will help you become regulatory compliant for your cannabis grow, NatureSideCannabis.com. This first story is from MarijuanaTimes.org. Illinois Senate approves non-binding ballot question on cannabis legalization. We told you something about this story yesterday. By a vote of 37 to 13, the Senate approved a measure that would put a non-binding referendum question on the November ballot. That means that if people vote for it, then it'll just be a sign to the legislature that they need to do something about marijuana legalization. It wouldn't actually legalize marijuana on its own. And now that goes to the House of Representatives in Illinois to be approved. Governor Bruce Rauner said he has called this effort, quote, misguided and legalization a mistake. And he has vowed several times to veto any sort of marijuana legalization. I mean, maybe a vote in November would change his mind, maybe if it was a huge vote in favor of legalization. But he's not a fan, to say the least. Senator Bill Cunningham, the chief sponsor of the referendum legislation, said the debate over marijuana legalization is continuing to lead many states to consider various ideas and changes to current laws. Asking the people of Illinois how they feel about the subject can help determine which path we take as legislators. As mentioned yesterday, this is also happening albeit in an earlier stage in Rhode Island. And again, as I pointed out yesterday, this is going to happen a lot as we run out of states where the people can just bring ballot questions and petitions to the ballot box on their own and bypass the legislature. Most of the states remaining, when it comes to legalization, you're going to have to go through the legislature, and that's going to be a long and sometimes weird process. This next story is from MarijuanaMoment.net. Friend Tom Angel over there. TV anchor discloses medical marijuana involvement in emotional on-air statement. One of the 5 companies awarded a medical marijuana cultivation license by Arkansas regulators on Tuesday involves a prominent TV personality in the state, a fact she made public in an emotional on-air statement. I wanted to be the first to tell you because this information will be made public soon. Donna Terrell of Fox 13 said at the tail end of a segment about the new cannabis licenses. I know this is a controversial subject, excuse me, but let me show you why I wanted to be part of this. It's because of my daughter Quay. She died from colon cancer 7 years ago. Terrell, knowing that Tuesday happened to be her daughter's birthday, said medical cannabis could have helped ease some of her suffering. She said, I know medical marijuana would not have saved her life. Based on my research and experience as her caregiver, I know she would have benefited greatly. Medicinal marijuana would have made those last few months, weeks, and days much more tolerable. I miss her every day. And obviously these stories like this, when they make the news, they show people, they're an example, they're a pinpoint when it comes to the people who use medical marijuana every day. And a lot of them are people who are in their daughter's condition. Maybe it wouldn't have cured their disease, but it would have made their last days and made their life more bearable, made their quality of life better. Oh, excuse me. And the fact that this is not universal is odd when you think about it. The fact that medical marijuana is not legal everywhere is a travesty. You can argue all day about recreational marijuana and, you don't want hippies getting stoned unless they have a medical reason and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of polls in most states put medical marijuana legalization and people in favor of it above 80%. Some polls put support for medical marijuana above 90%. It's just very, very odd that someone like her daughter, Donna Terrell's daughter, wouldn't have access to medical marijuana. Wouldn't be allowed. Would be considered a criminal, and she would have been considered a criminal if she would have given her medical marijuana. It's just weird. I think sometimes we get lost in like the nuance of these things, and we don't step back and see just how weird it is because we're used to it. Especially us in the cannabis industry, report on it or follow it or active in it or whatever. We see it all the time. It's a fact. It's just a fact. If you think about it objectively and logically, it's very, very odd, to say the least. In any case, now we're going to check out my interview with Zeyead Gharib, CEO of Harvest Direct Enterprise. I even mentioned at the beginning of this interview that I'm going to butcher his name. I probably have throughout this entire show. I've probably butchered his name. Go check out harvestdirectenterprises.com. Like I said, we asked him about their new manufacturing method, Lacey. They say they can capture an entire cannabis strain in one pill. He describes some of how they do that and what that means for you. All of that in this interview coming up. It's a Marijuana Times show. Thanks everybody for checking us out. Go check us out on YouTube and Facebook and all that. Search the Marijuana Times. Also on Apple Podcasts for the audio-only version of the show. Search the Marijuana Times on Apple Podcasts. Now my interview with Zeyead Gharib. We will see you all tomorrow. Thanks everybody for watching the Marijuana Times show. Hey everybody, Joe Klare here with the Marijuana Times on the Skype. We have Zeyead. I got that wrong, didn't I?
That's fine. Everyone calls me Z, but it's Zeyead Gharib.
Zeyead Gharib from Harvest Direct Enterprises. I will call you Z for the remainder of the interview for my purposes, my simplification purposes. Thanks for being on the show, Z.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Before we get into what Harvest Direct Enterprises does, and you go into this a little bit on your website, but can you give us kind of a background on how you all got started?
Sure. So essentially, me and my team, all of us have cannabis industry experience, but most of us started in cannabis testing. So essentially being the people that make the numbers that go on the back of cannabis products when you buy them. So we had a very, very good understanding of cannabis science. And then from there, we took that understanding of cannabis science and we started going into product development. And we started focusing on one process in particular, and that's the activation and infusion step when you're making edibles or any other cannabis products. Basically, we honed in on that chemical process and we found a way to do it in a way where you don't have any terpene loss or degradation of the chemical profile. So essentially that allows you to put the entire cannabis strain into a pill or an inhaler or a topical.
Okay. So the Lacey process, which is described on your website for people who want to go check it out, how is that better and what was it wrong and what was the problem with the way people have been doing it for the last few decades?
Sure. So essentially, people are using heat to do the activation and the infusion step when making these products. And if you've ever made brownies, you've done this yourself at home. Essentially, you have to use heat to activate the THCA to THC for it to be active when you take it orally or when you rub it on your skin or when you put it in an inhaler.
Okay.
So essentially, this process of just using plain heat is kind of like using a nuclear bomb when an assassin is needed. The nuclear bomb, that being heat, pretty much goes in and destroys everything, but it gets the reaction done that you're looking for. But the cost of it is that you lose the plant profile. So, for example, Sour Diesel and Blue Dream are very similar in terms of their THC content. But the effects of those two strains are very, very, very different. And those differences arise from the entourage effect or the tiny other molecules that contribute to the effects of cannabis. So basically, when everyone else does it, they get rid of this entourage effect and they lose those tiny molecules. Through LACY, and LACY stands for Lossless Activation Chamber Y, but through LACY, we are able to essentially carry out that activation in a lossless way, meaning we can start off with the Blue Dream terpene profile, perform our activation, and then have the terpene profile stay exactly the same. So we're definitely very, very excited about it. It's something that's never been done before, and it's going to be big for medicine because essentially strains right now are being bred for certain ailments. But the problem is when you do the activation and the infusion process, those specific medicinal effects of those strains are lost. So up until now, patients had to smoke or vape to get the specific strain effects or their specific medicinal effects. And that's what LACY essentially solves, is it allows us to do that process while maintaining everything throughout.
Okay. So when you talk about moving into the product end of things, how have you translated that process into the products, and where can people find those if they're interested in doing so?
So unfortunately, we're not on store shelves yet.
Okay.
What we've been doing is more so focusing on intellectual property development and developing the process that allows us to do this. And we plan on taking these machines and selling them and licensing them to the top processors in every state. So that way we can have instant overnight distribution. Our revenue model is a little different from most people in the cannabis industry. And in fact, I've never met another cannabis company that's focused on intellectual property and licensing. So it definitely makes us unique and it makes us stand out. And it also gives us access to things like pharmaceutical acquisitions and exits that most cannabis companies don't have in their future.
Okay. Do you have any sort of a timetable for the future or goals as far as where you guys want to be in a certain amount of time?
Sure. So actually, we've developed LACY 1.0, which was the brass version, and that's the version we used for our patent data. And then after that, we built the stainless steel version, and actually have the main chamber of it right here.
Okay.
We have the stainless steel version, and this was the first LACY, or the first main chamber to LACY, that allowed us to actually try these strain-specific products. And without a shadow of a doubt, they are absolutely amazing. Like when we capture OG Kush in a pill, we have captured all of its effects. So we're talking about a cannabis edible that makes you feel animated, social, happy, energetic. And it's really cool to experience that from a cannabis edible because it's something I've personally never felt before. And it gets me excited because of the medical applications. My brother has social anxiety, and the OG Kush pills honestly work better than his prescribed medications. And I'm not a doctor. I can't recommend that other people do the same, but it's up to you as a patient to find what works for you. And as cannabis is becoming legal, this is a viable option now.
Yeah, it's much better that they have the choice. It really is amazing what legalization has done over the last, even the last several years as far as technology and what opening everything up has made available. It's really an amazing time. I want to thank you, Z, for coming on the show. Everybody check out Harvest Direct Enterprises. Anything else you want to tell people out there before we let you go, Z?
Basically, right now we're in the seeking investor phase. So if there are any investors out there who want to get in on the next big thing in cannabis, and this literally is the next big thing in cannabis, please do not hesitate to contact us. We're working with the largest IP firm in the nation, and they're working with us pro bono in the outset and now on a sliding scale. So we really are onto something. And our next bit of innovation, so we have the pills, but the next bit of innovation is going to be the inhaler, which I am very, very excited about. The world's first strain-specific inhalers where the onset and the kick-in essentially happens in 30 seconds rather than 30 minutes to an hour using the pill. So very, very, very excited about the future.
It's definitely incredible stuff. Thank you, Z, for coming on the show and chatting with us.
Definitely. No problem. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you.